to the session. And it is a privilege to have an opportunity given by ICAI to be standing here and to be speaking with an audience who themselves are so enriched that I feel that whatever we will be telling you, probably we'll be getting more in return. So thank you so much. And with the array of speakers we have since morning, we would try to concise into a small nugget, considering the time as well, and talk more about aspects which haven't been touched since morning, more around governance, more about technology, of course, while touching upon the fundamentals. So thank you so much. We'll begin the session now.
Yeah, and just to supplement, like all good things, everything else comes full circle. So we're here to, in a way, close out with some case studies and also try and make it a bit more interactive by looking to your comments or your experiences or your thoughts about, so that we try and make this both case study based as well as in the form of a quasi workshop.
So broadly, we'll be covering these four areas. Demystifying circularity, I think enough has been demystified since morning, right? Then we will contextualize circularity, related regulations, the emphasis on circularity in the Indian scenario, recently mostly in the context of our budget. Then what are the opportunities as far different sectors are concerned? Although some of the examples have been given, we'll try to explore more. And a few case studies where we talk about the circularity strategies. So beginning with our first area where we want, is circularity the next big innovation cycle? Of course, the answer is yes. If you see, the disruptions have been happening in waves. The first disruption was, when water power was discovered, or iron was old, or textiles. The second wave of disruption came with the steam engine, the railway, the steels. The third wave come on the combustion engines, electricity, chemistry, the molecular chemistry. The fourth wave, this was further advanced to aviation, petrochemicals. The fifth wave was the wave of digitalization. And the sixth wave, what we are seeing now, is a wave where we are talking about concepts like climate neutrality, carbon positive, net zero, decarbonization, where circularity is an important piece of that puzzle, as well as, of course, AI, IoT, robotics, the advanced digitalization concepts. Somebody mentioned about Industry 4.0. So those aspects are the next wave, which are disruptive forces, which are going to change the way how we run businesses, how we engage with our stakeholders, and how we build cost models. So circular economy has emerged as a pivotal economic model which offers not only the opportunity for sustainability, but also significant financial opportunities. And we're going to talk about these numbers in our subsequent slides. According to a World Bank study and a UN study, it says that the transition to circular economy would create more than 7 million jobs by 2030 and unlock around 4.5 trillion in economic growth. As we have been discussing since morning, circular economy is a production and consumption model which is focused on sharing, leasing, reusing, repurposing, repairing, recycling, refurbishing materials for as long as possible, right? Thereby extending the life cycle of the materials. If you see an old wasteful world, which was more around material sourcing, manufacturing, distribution, sales, retail, at each part of the overall cycle, there was some kind of a waste which was being generated. And most of the time this waste was disposed. Nobody thought the economic value of the waste. So we had a manufacturing waste, production waste, we had waste from logistics, waste from packaging, waste from consumption, and the product related waste at the end of the life of the product. The circular economy, 4 simple principles are there. Use lesser resources, which means narrow down your scope, slow down, extend the product lifestyle. Dr. Aditya Gupta also mentioned about product lifestyle extension. Then cycle, recycle, reuse materials, and then regenerate using clean, regenerative materials and energy. So these are the 4 basic fundamentals of circular economy principles. And any strategy you look at in today's world, any business strategy, any business model is based on these 4 fundamental pillars. So what is the business case of circular economy? So global circular economy transactions in 2022, they generated around $339 billion of revenue. And there are projections that these transactions could grow, almost double to $712 billion by 2026. So in 4 years, just look at the tremendous growth potential of this opportunity. In terms of emission reduction, right? And why do we talk about emission reduction? Because when it comes with emission reduction, there is an additional opportunity in terms of carbon credits, right? So adopting circular business models, it has a potential to reduce carbon emissions by up to 45% and minimize material waste by as much as 90%. This is a World Economic Forum study which talks about this. Pollution reduction, of course, a circular economy which is for food, catalyzed by cities, it could save around 290,000 lives per year, which could otherwise be lost because of air pollution. Economic potential, again, 4.5 trillion economy, global output by 2030. Something, this figure is expected to increase by $25 trillion globally, I am saying. Of course, we have heard about Indian figures by the experts here. And then the saving potential in terms of using recycling, reuse, remanufacturing, it could unlock something like a 1 trillion in annual revenue savings by 25 and 2 trillion doubling of it by 2050. These are not just numbers, these are studies, rigorous studies which have been done on different aspects on the current situation of initiatives what we have and the potential of circular economy measures. Suchint, would you like to add something more in terms of the models?
So I think just looking at how we've been thinking through costing, we've been focused on elements of all of the lines of cost in a production system. And of course, in each of these cost lines, there is a need for CMAs to look at the activity that gives rise to a cost and then determine if there is a scope for optimizing the activity. Having said that, the point that's being made and throughout today is that there is value engineering, and value engineering is about looking to create newer opportunities for value discovery, which is to say that, for instance, if you're looking at recycling, then that leads to two things. It leads to a certain cost in the system in order to determine what's the incremental or the marginal cost, if you will, and it's not truly marginal as much as incremental, the incremental cost towards, let's call it recycling a particular product line, and then determining the price at which you'll be able to sell. So most of the time when we think of cost and management accounting, it's enabling decision making or it's enabling the ability to calculate costs appropriately, including potentially shadow costing, including potentially opportunity cost. But when we look at this and say, how can I price something that enables me to do a price discovery in the context of the circular economy? That requires an additional facet of saying what's the incremental cost for recycling and what's the incremental price that could be looked at as a result of what's the new and this is different from byproduct or joint product costing as we used to know it. It's the creation of an all new product, except that you couldn't possibly get the difference between a recycled one and the original one, save for the facts that you would be able to cost them differently. So main point is that value engineering is one of the important facets that needs to be looked at for in the context of the entire circular economy.
Thank you. So let's focus on circularity in the global and the Indian context. If you see, this is something which is not new, although the regulations are probably coming in India, but if you see globally, in North America, Europe, APAC, Middle East, we have been having circular economy related regulations. In USA, there is an EPA Sustainable Material Management Program. In Canada, there is an action plan on zero plastic waste strategy. There is a ban on single-use plastics. In EU also, there is a circular economy action plan. You were mentioning about Niti Aayog's circular economy cell. So most of the work which Niti Aayog has been influenced by these leading work which has been done in other geographies. So UK, we have a plastic packaging tax. We have EPR schemes and waste management programs. In China also, there is a circular economy promotion law. Similarly, in Japan, Australia, South Korea, and UAE. So circular economy policies and frameworks have been instituted around the world. When you look at India from a perspective of different aspects, we have the e-waste management rules, which mandates manufacturers, producers, recyclers, and refurbishers to meet certain recycling and refurbishing obligations. And there is a reporting also. So when you go to a CPCB, Central Pollution Control Board website, there is a portal itself for EPR registration for each of these stakeholders in the value chain. In terms of batteries and chemicals, we have, of course, battery waste management rules, and we have hazardous material rules. For plastic and packaging, we have plastic waste management rules of 2016, which have been amended over a period of time. And then at the product level, we have EPR rules in all of these plastic, for battery, for e-waste, mostly for handling and disposing of products at the end of their life. So these are the pertinent regulations which are there in terms of, they form the larger, they form a larger part of the overall environmental regulation landscape in India. Now, when we come about what is the emphasis on circularity over the past few years, and India has progressively emphasized on the principles of circular economy, reflecting a strategic shift towards sustainable development. Starting from 22-23, the budget itself identified the circular economy as a priority area, emphasizing the action for different sectors in e-waste, end of life vehicles, used oil, or toxic and hazardous industrial waste. I think Vivek already mentioned about Niti Aayog Circular Economy Cell, which was established in September 22. Apart from that, CII also introduced the National Circular Economy Framework. So this document is there, again a 40-50 page document, where you can understand what does the framework talk about. This framework came around in the early part of 23. And then in 23-24, the Govardhan team scheme was established, which was galvanizing organic bioagro resources done. Under this scheme, there was a plan to introduce around 200 compressed biogas (CBG) plants. So this is again an example of waste to energy. Again, a big example of circularity. Especially, India is an agrarian economy, and we have multiple avenues, and while there are avenues, there are problems of the waste. So how do you handle that waste, and how do you create wealth out of that waste? And then in 24-25, more recently, the cabinet approved the National Critical Mineral Mission with an outlay of 34,300 crores over 7 years. And there also around 18,000 crores investment is expected from PSUs. Now, under this mission, what they have done is that they have exempted and they are working on plans with the likes of state PSUs to expand and get a secure supply of critical minerals. And of course, one way is you acquire assets. The other way is whatever waste the India is importing, we are able to get into an economic model where we extract that and get the most benefit for our decarbonization journey. So there has been announced an exemption of basic custom duty on import of waste lithium-ion waste, along with scrap from 12 other critical minerals, which include copper and other important minerals important for the EV and the renewable energy expansion. And then lastly and most importantly, the government is proposing a policy on recovery of critical minerals. It is underway, and this is soon to be released. And this is where we will make a business case for circularity, because this will be a high value industry, right? Yeah. So talking about the opportunities to embed circularity, I think This line diagram has been most seen and most talked about since morning. Dr. Aditya Gupta also talked about it. So basically, concerted efforts around the value chain are required for embracing circularity. Right at the stage where you are designing the product, to where you are procuring the raw material, to where you are manufacturing, distributing, finally the end user is using it, and at the end of the life. So there were five circular economy models which were being talked about at each of these stages. This is just an extension of the model which Dr. Aditya mentioned about. So what exactly is required? Even at the designing stage, we need to develop products which are easy to disassemble and dismantle. It should not be a complicated case, because otherwise there will not be any incentive to go back and put it back. The first model of circular economy was circular supply chain, circular input model. So there will be no incentive for that business model if we don't design the product in such a way. Again, the use of biodegradable and recycled material at the time of product design itself, at the time of production of the product. Then, when it comes to one aspect which has not been touched upon sufficiently, is more on the user end of it. While you, as an organization, as a business organization, you are doing everything in your hand to embed the principles of circularity. But at the user end, it is equally important to sensitize, to create that awareness so that you create the demand for a circular economy product. So, campaigns are important to be launched to educate consumers. As much as you would be saving on your cost, it is important to educate consumers to say that overall life cycle cost, right? The cost of disposal, the cost of a mobile phone lying in my drawers, 10 mobile phone lying in my drawers. What is the cost of that? If there is a way they can make money, the Cashify example was one of them. If there's a way they can make money, of course, there's an incentive for them to adopt circular economy principles. So the education becomes very, very important. And lastly, and most importantly, the working on the collection part of it, which is the actual challenge. At this point in time, when we talk about circular economy initiatives, we talk about buyback, we talk about EPR, 95% of the sector is informal. In fact, in the informal sector, it is difficult to isolate the person who is doing the recycling or the refurbishing from the harmful impacts of the dismantling process he is undertaking. So that is why efficient models need to be built in. In the morning, we were talking about circular economy parks. The idea of circular economy parks, which is already prevalent in Japan, South Korea, they are the ones, our government, state governments, government of Maharashtra, they signed an MOU with one of the companies to actually institutionalize a circular economy park to make it more efficient, to formalize the overall thing. So what will happen there? Somebody, a small manufacturer, if he faces problem in the collection process, right? He can actually go with a hub model. Somebody, a recycler who doesn't understand what is the safe way to recycle or what is the right way to recycle. Because if it's not done safely, if it is not done rightly, you may not even recover the actual potential of the material you are trying to recover. So, scientific way of recycling, scientific way of waste management, structured process, uh, probably technology also will play a larger role, where it will bring the recycler, the manufacturer, everybody on the same platform, and probably create and incentivize a financial system to incentivize these people. So this is something, it is at a visionary stage, but soon to come. So how do we take these opportunities like this, and how do we leverage it? That is the bigger question now, because we all understand in its current shape and form, whatever collection, segregation, recycling is happening, it is not serving much of the purpose for anyone. So let's talk about the sector-wise opportunities. I think it's too fine a print to read from the back, but I'll just focus on the areas. So we have taken around 7 sectors here, starting from manufacturing, and we focus on what are the key focus areas when it comes to circular economy. So resource efficiency, industrial symbiosis, and reuse of byproducts. This was something which was touched upon by Dr. Aditya Gupta also. Now, when it comes to industrial symbiosis, I'll give you an example of a steel plant and a cement plant being close together. The granulated blast furnace slag from the steel plant can go to a cement plant. It can be an additive there. So, and the cherry on the cake is that it's the same company. The parent group is the same. And this is very much in Karnataka, what we are talking about. So this is symbiosis. So if you are expanding into thinking about another business, now what you can see is how the waste of one business can become an input material or an alternate fuel for the second business. And again, imagine the cost savings, imagine the cost savings, imagine the efficiency. And just because of this particular thing, the cement plant carbon dioxide intensity is carbon dioxide per ton of the output product, per ton of cement. It is half than what it is actually what is there in a normal plant. So let's say in a normal plant, if it is in the range of 400 something, this cement plant, because of use of this granulated blast furnace slag, the carbon dioxide intensity is around 290 something. So what I'm trying to say here is, and you know what is the economic advantage of that? The economic advantage for this cement plant is that tomorrow when we have scheme, carbon compliance trading scheme in India, where the perform achieve trade scheme is transitioning to carbon credits, this cement plant will be able to meet its targets. It will not have a carbon liability. So if you see the overall life cycle, the concept of the life cycle cost of that ton of cement, it is saving on many accounts. The raw material cost it is saving the carbon liability which it will have. So this is one key example which is very useful. So the proposition here is a new revenue stream from the waste, reduced raw material movement cost as well as disposal costs. Similarly, in the world of fashion and textiles, by extending product life, we saw the Patagonia example. That was a prime example of how you strike a chord with your consumers on the lines of, using circularity. Automotive, end of life vehicle recycling, remanufacturing, and battery circularity. These are areas. So, of course, leading to reduced raw material cost and aftermarket revenue streams. Food and agriculture, minimization of food waste, byproduct utilization, and thinking about sustainable packaging. When we talk about sugar sector, for example, there's a lot of waste coming. That waste can be used to make package. Bagasse-based product packaging solutions can be looked at, right? Technology and electronics, the e-waste management, refurbishment, extending device life cycle, that is another way. It leads to high value material recovery as well as reduced reliance on virgin resources and of course associated costs. Coming to construction and real estate sector, construction and demolition waste recycling, I think Mr. Pandya also talked about it this morning. Modular design, green building materials, these are the opportunities for circular economy. Of course, you lower the material cost, there's a faster construction time, and you comply with the green standards. Additional benefit, based on my real-time experience with a real estate company. While doing all of this, there was enough brand building, and they realized that when they said that the carbon intensity of the flats they are selling is so much lesser than the normal average carbon intensity in the market, they could command a premium in the market. The customers were willing to pay. So that was an added advantage they saw in the market. Then it comes to retail and consumer goods. Of course, packaging is something which needs to be worked on. So reusable packaging, refill models, and reverse logistics. These are the areas where we can touch upon and see opportunities when it comes to circularity. Suchint, would you like to add a few things?
Yeah, well, maybe three things. One is that we've ordinarily been thinking of corporations and their subsidiaries and groups, and therefore all of our energies so far have been focused on corporations as we see conglomerates. We've one of the ways which was or an intervention that was used more recently statutorily was GST, which forced us to look at an ecosystem. In other words, what's our supplier in order to get GST credit, and Vidya had mentioned this in the panel discussion, and similarly for the customer. We need to think of circular economy in in very much the same way, which is that look at our ecosystems, because uh, if we are the weakest chain in the link, then effectively that's going to throw cost metrics as well as, of course, the opportunity revenue into a disease. So, looking to what the and this is truly the value chain. In other words, everybody needs to think about not just themselves or not just the corporation, but also who is their supplier and who is their customer, and then how do we bring it all back together. Uh, to put it in another way, if I simply get rid of my inventory by selling it to the next person in the chain, that's only shifting, if it were the impact, but it's not necessarily causing or resulting in value creation. So the elements of uh, uh, what I would encourage everyone is to look at the key value propositions, because these are either through uh, the use of optimal costs, generating new streams of revenue, and in those revenue streams, for instance, in areas like fashion and potentially electronics, you might also be able to create some intangible value. Now, just one other thing before we go to the next one slide is that it would appear from this that value chains in circular economy seem to work better in country than cross border, simply because there is a lot of logistics involved. And therefore, one of the areas that we do need to think about, and this is more to do at a policy level, is to do with the point that was made today by the chief guest, which is to think about either free trade agreements or equivalent carbon credit agreements, or to think about ways in which, if I do something that is ecologically viable, can I be able to without having to transport that to another jurisdiction, gain the benefit of that by virtue of giving a credit for it. So, therefore, I think our why we are focused in country, because that's physically possible, and a lot of this is about physicality. But as supply chains grow cross border, that's another area where we would expect to be more diligent on ways in which we can recreate value and discover value through optimizing transportation and logistics costs, which in fact account for a very significant portion of the circular economy.
So how can companies embed circular economy function in an organization structure? So circularity, as you would have realized since morning, it is not confined to a single function or a department in an organization. It necessitates strategic intervention from a design team, from a procurement team, from a production team, marketing and customer team, as well as an after sales team. Now, by breaking down these silos which currently exist, now organizations can actually foster a shared understanding of circular strategies. And in the end, this leads to lowering of procurement costs and increase in the revenues through innovative business models. So what we are proposing here is that, while we have yeah. So while we have other committees at the center of operationalizing circular economy, it is important when you start in the organization on the circular economy initiatives. It is very important to have a holistic view. It is important to understand how other departments they fit into the overall puzzle of circular economy. There might be ideas which might come from people on the shop floor. There will be ideas which will come from the marketing team who will be hearing and talking and speaking with the customers. And the best part is to start at a stage where everyone is brought to the table. They ensure that each functional area expert provides that knowledge and wisdom from a cost perspective, from an impact perspective, from a reduction perspective. So this is not a siloed problem. So that is why it's important to have a comprehensive, holistic approach. Because what we have seen is in actual implementation in companies, if there is a sustainability team talking about circularity, they're only measuring the impact in terms of carbon dioxide intensity. If there is a procurement team, they're only looking at how they can reduce the cost of procurement. So they're working in their silos. It's important that they talk to each other, because it is possible that this multivariate problem where you're optimizing the cost of procurement versus the cost of emissions, because emissions are going to be costly in future, not just anywhere but in India itself. You must have heard about the carbon markets, Indian carbon markets coming up. So you think from that perspective also, right? And that is why it is important to consider the overall life cycle cost, and not just cost, the true cost of the product. True cost will embed the environmental cost, the social cost. So from those perspective also, these two departments, they need to talk to each other, and not just these two, probably other departments also. So the larger role of interdepartmental interaction needs to be explored here. Otherwise, we will only be solving a univariate problem, and our solution will be half-baked. So this is something which what we realize, this hasn't been talked since morning. How do you embed and use technology to enable your circularity initiatives? As of now, there are examples around the world where people are using blockchain and artificial intelligence in addressing the circular economy issues. So blockchain has helped circular economy and sustainability efforts by increasing the level of traceability and transparency across the supply chains. So the digital tagging, the immutable character of the blockchain enables to keep a system of record which tracks different components in your value chain and enables this overall reduce, reuse, recycle. Essentially, when these departments or circular economy committees are talking to each other, they would need data. And this data has to be in a form which is untampered. So blockchain comes there, where it talks about, providing robust data for you to take decisions on costs, on revenues, on identifying and picking the right circular economy strategy for your company. So this is an example of Carrefour. They have extended the use of blockchain technology to their Tex Bio line of bed linen and baby bodysuit textile products. So they are tracking each and every component of the raw material through blockchain, and that also is important from an ESG perspective, which Vidya was mentioning. Because when it comes to ESG disclosures, they're able to get this data on the tip of their hands, and they're able to disclose it also whether it's a regulation which is pertinent to that. So this is a very good example. And of course, this is again a technology where you will say this is an additional cost. But see the benefit of this versus the cost of compliance that you might face if you're not implementing this technology. Artificial intelligence is also providing a few use cases in this field. So basically, in designing of circular products, many of the designers you would see, they are using the compendium, the richness of the knowledge available to design products which actually show an impact on the emission side, on the cost side. I think Vivek just used AI to get you the data of the payback period on the circular economy initiatives. That was a live example. Similarly, you can use AI to design a product more efficiently. You can compare a design A with a design B, and you can make it more efficient in terms of whatever your final objective of the problem is. You want to save cost, you want to build a least cost product, or you want to build a product which is a midway between least cost and least carbon, right? So you can decide on those kind of problems can be solved using AI. And apparently, AI is estimated to unlock a potential of 90 billion USD every year by helping designing out waste in consumer electronics category, and 127 billion USD in the foods category. This has been the research and this has been the data formed by the leading AI institutions. Now, functionalities such as extending a lifetime of a product through predictive maintenance, especially in the electronics and the automation sector, and recycling of infrastructure. This is a very important use case. People are exploring, they are building POCs using AI to see how they can handle the circular economy issues at hand using technology without actually having to spend too much cost on building a hard POC. So, in fact, Stuffster is a company which is using AI for dynamic pricing for a secondary market in circular economy using AI. So Stuffster specializes in second-hand retail market. So they are using AI to actually price their products that they buy from the customers. So they've been building this model using AI. The backend systems, they use machine learning to ensure that there's a classification of resale items and there's rapid feedback loops which are given for their overall sales strategy. So that's one way, one problem of circular economy you can solve using AI. Similarly, there are multiple use cases if we go and explore them.
So just a couple of comments in addition. One is that uh, departments, and this is where the cost accountant has to come in to work shoulder to shoulder with everybody from design all the way through distribution. So this is like a common link, and that's how you can create added value by being the bond between departments, and therefore in a way to realize synergistic value. Uh, I'd say the second thing is that while a lot of our cases have dealt with uh, cases of circular economy and business models built on circular economy, let's not take away the fact that every business has elements of circular economy embedded in each of its cost lines and each of its activities. So, for example, if you take a service business like the airlines, and remember again that for a long time, service businesses have been sort of feeding up on a lot of fat in their cost lines. So their cost lines don't get subjected to as much scrutiny, and therefore there's more variability in their pricing as opposed to manufacturing because that's more tangible. Uh, what circularity is supposed with a shifting focus in circularity, we are going to be able to realize more or extract more value from our cost lines by looking at each element of cost irrespective of what business you are in and saying that can I take this cost and look at a circularity in respect of the activity that is generated from this cost. And like I said, one of the reasons why an airline tends to optimize its number of flights is the reason why there is a lot of in-flight activity and a goal to try and get as little time on the ground as possible by doing a lot more activities, including cleaning and baggage handling in, at, in a rapid manner. So similarly, when it concerns lighting in our facilities, we should be thinking about other ways in which we can make sure that lights go out when there's no one in the room. And for that, again, can we look at ways in which we can, instead of incurring a capex, can we incur a revenue expenditure? So, reimagining the manner in which we spend, then the manner in which we we earn our revenues at any level, irrespective of circular or otherwise, will get us to the point where we are embedding circularity as well as thinking of the ecosystem as opposed to our organization.
So we have curated a select few case studies, and I have deliberately removed a few which have been discussed this morning. One is very famous case study on digital deposit refund scheme system. It's by a company called Recycle. So we're all aware of the Kedarnath trail, and we see a surge of pilgrims every year. So the problem was that in 2022 there was a lot of lot of pilgrims, and over the years authorities felt that there is severe waste accumulation in terms of the plastic bottles which the pilgrims were carrying. Now, to tackle this, this digital deposit refund system was launched with a company called Recycle, which was actually incentivizing these pilgrims to return the plastic bottles for refunds. So this system worked very well. So there are 4 zones in the overall trail, which is the Dham area, the outside Dham area to Gaurikund, then Gaurikund to Somprayag, and Somprayag to Guptkashi. Now, multiple collection areas were established across these 4 zones. And see, this is where the multiple bodies, they shook hands to ensure that the system works and is successful. So with the government of Uttarakhand, right, what you see on your right is the poster. Now the poster, it was, again, as I was talking about, consumer awareness is very important. So they had actually ran a campaign around it. So what does the poster say? The poster says, क्या आपके बोतल में QR code है? बोतल लाएं, 10 रुपए रिफंड वापस दें. So imagine a Bisleri bottle is probably selling it at probably 20-25 rupees. You get the bottle back, you get your 10 rupees back. The best part, when I was talking to somebody in Recycle, and she told me, you know, it was more like, the game the kids play, to get more points. It finally became that sort between the pilgrims. And the gamification part of it actually worked. So, in fact, for that matter, some of the localites also, when they saw that bottle being lying somewhere, they just picked up. The kids picked up the bottle. They went to the shopkeeper. They got their 10 rupees. So this became the whole exercise. So essentially, what is happening? There is a huge problem of waste management is getting solved there, right? But the system they worked out, it incentivizes everyone. It incentivizes the shopkeeper also. There is a potential part of incentive which going to the company called Recycle, because they are collecting all the bottles through these shopkeepers. They are recycling it. And the best part of it was this project is in the phase of getting registered for a plastic credit project at the international body called VERA. So Plastic Recycling and Collection Initiative, this got registered. Now what they are getting there is these plastic credits will be sold to the likes of Nestle or Unilever in lieu of certain revenues, which will be plowed back into the system to the people who are working for the system. So this was a very wonderful example, and just simple idea of having a QR code, an app, making it easier for the people, giving them incentives to do the collection. It really turned the tables so much on the waste management problem which the yatris were facing, the authorities were facing, the administration was facing. So basically, this digital DRS, it enabled a closed loop recycling system with a QR based tracking and cashback system. That was a long story short of this one. Another example is of remanufacturing. So basically, an auto manufacturer, global auto manufacturer, this was a remanufacturing program. They collected used engine blocks, gearboxes, and turbochargers from their customers. What they did was they reconditioned them and they resold them with a warranty at a fraction of the cost of the new products. Now, what happened was it extended, of course, the life cycle of the product. It reduced the maintenance cost for the fleet owners. So, like for a normal truck operator who was using this remanufactured engine, he saved around 2 lakh per vehicle over 2 years through reduced maintenance, lower downtime, longer part life, and improved fuel efficiency. And the company used only 10 to 20% of the materials of a new part for this reconditioning. So it was basically a win-win scenario both for the customer as well as for the company who was remanufacturing it.
I think both these examples give you some insight into how difficult the costing exercise and then therefore the value discovery exercise is, because you might just think that therefore I need to have potentially two segments in my cost lines, or there are potentially two cost curves taking place. One in respect of what is remanufactured, or in respect of the bottle example, the collection costs associated with the bottles, and then associated with that again in respect to the bottle example was the how much is the price that you have to pay for collection of the for someone giving you back the bottle. But then as your business gets more and more tightly integrated, as with this example, you're going to be not able to distinguish between the two revenue lines, or potentially the two cost lines start to merge, because you won't make a distinction if your quality keeps improving between what is a remanufactured and what is the original product. How do you essentially get to, and do you at all in the first place make that distinction? You build a segment, and then if you get better and better, do you combine the two segments? How do you price remanufactured products? Throws up new challenges. which have hitherto not been the subject of as much debate and discussion, because most of uh, our activity is built around absorption costing, allocations, and apportionments. But when it comes to re-engineering, when it comes to determining the price of a new product that is in fact the old product, and this gives me there is a famous story. It's almost a fable, which is about a ship. And what happens is that if you keep removing the parts of a ship and keep then replacing these parts, eventually is that a new ship or is that the old ship? So that this sort of gives rise to a whole gamut of very complex and very new sets of challenges that therefore come as great opportunities for all of us to look at costs in ways that haven't been looked at or studied in the past.
And then one more example, where you think there are two ways. So you're repurposing waste as an energy source. I think in the morning somebody told about, agri residues and how they are being used as a source of energy. There's an increasing sentiment, when we talk to stakeholders, that farmers have become from annadatas to urja datas. Urja is energy. So whatever waste that was being burnt, along with whatever food systems were there, now that waste is being converted to energy. Additional stream of revenue for the farmers, right? Additional stream of revenues where they meet their own energy requirements, as well as they're able to sell extra back, give it back to the grid. So those are the areas we are talking about, and this is a very a good example of a beverage company who is in the production of coffee. So the coffee beans, of course, they are extracted, and the husk which is used has a considerable heat value of 3,200 kilocalories per kg, which was more than the conventional fuel which was fired in the boilers. So they use this husk, reduce their fuel cost by 78 lakhs annually, improving their EBITDA by 15%, and additionally, there was volatility of the fossil fuel price. They were overcome that, as well as stability and reliance. At the end of it, the other thing which they achieved from this was this project also served as a feasible, as a likable candidate for carbon credit markets, the voluntary carbon markets. So they earned additional revenues also, which they put back into helping the community of people who were helping them in the coffee plantations. So they used it to support them. So basically, a very good example to say that all these waste to energy projects are a likable candidate. They have multiple benefits on multiple areas when it comes to cost reduction, when it comes to generating additional revenues through a carbon credit market mechanism. So this was we thought these are some of the few examples which were probably not touched upon since morning, and I think that brings us to the end of our presentation. Thank you so much for the time and being attentive listeners.
Thank you very much. What we wanted to do was to bring alive some of the case studies more from a cost and a value dynamic perspective, so that we, in a way, blend Dr. Gupta's presentation in the morning and close out with the metrics of cost, value, and price. And of course, reinforce the message that ultimately management accounting is about working shoulder to shoulder with engineering, procurement,